Good morning. We're going to talk about the life cycles of the plants on here. So the beginning of Unit 4, you can get underneath your ebook and you can look at it this way. But we're going to talk about the plant cycles again today. I just wanted to go over life cycles. So here is a life cycle of a caterpillar. It says changes that happen to an animal or plant during its life. So it's one of those vocabulary words we should have written down. Organism is a living thing was the other word that we were covering. And the last word that I wanted you to write down was germination. So I'll make sure that that is on this slideshow. We're going to talk about the plant life of cycles like we've been talking about. Today we're going to talk about all of them, flowering and non-flowering. All right, these are some plant life cycles, and this is a bee trying to get some pollen nectar from a flower. They're the ones who pollinate and allows the plants to travel and go to different places. You should have watched the Dandelion's Journey, the video. That was the last one that we watched. And these are Seeds on the Go. So that's like the book that I was reading from my devotional, Science and God. And it's just talking about the living things experience a life cycle or changes that happen from the beginning of their lives until they die. Plants have life cycles with certain stages, so everything has to have an order, and that's what we're talking about today. Is we're going to talk the order on how the life cycle goes. But as the seeds on the go, let's talk about that for a minute. How do seeds travel? Do you remember from the Brain Pop and the Science and God book? Right. So the wind can blow it. They go through travel like through water, as in like rivers and seas. And then the last thing is the animals, just like the bee was just doing the nectar and the pollination. Animals that are eating fruits and stuff, the seeds can be on the fur that will travel, or they just spread them as they are eating them. So this was the flowering plant that you should have done, and this is the steps of them. Seed, germination is when it sprouts. Young adult, reproduction. So this is how the dandelion, the seeds just go and fly. It's from the wind or we blow them. I know a lot of people blow the dandelion, and then they die. And that's the life cycle of that flowering plant. So this is the page that you should have read about the two different trees from the flowering one and then also the non-flowering one with the cones. As you can see that there is many plants that live next to each other. We have here the flowering one and then the cones one. And this is, they can see that the difference between the two of them. We have the cones on this one and you have the pine needles on that one. And this one is obviously your flowers. Um, a lot of our fruit trees, they start with the flower. Is that stem that we have, like tomatoes have the green on top, strawberries have that on top. That is from a flower. Even the pumpkin that we were studying, right? It has the yellow flower that comes open and closes. And then once it's the green pumpkin, then the flower falls off. But with our pine cone ones, it's different. So we have the pine cones and the seeds are inside of the cones. And that is how those our non-flowering plants work. All right, and this is going to be the pine trees producing their cones.
Some plants form seeds in cones instead of in flowers. Seeds from the pine cone can fall to the ground. When a seed germinates, the first stem and needle-shaped leaves come out of the seed. Roots also begin to grow out of the seed. When the leaves reach sunlight, the plant starts making food for itself. During this stage, the sapling, or young tree, grows more roots and branches. As the tree grows, the trunk grows and expands. The adult pine tree has a thick, sturdy trunk and branches full of needle-shaped leaves. The adult pine trees produce cones. The cones contain seeds that the tree will use for reproduction. When the seeds leave the cones, they may grow into new saplings. After many years, the adult tree will.
All right. So you have a page where you're going to arrange your life cycle of a non-flowering plant. And it looks very, very similar to the flowering plant. So we have the seed, the germination, which is the sprout, the young tree, adult, reproduction, and death. So it's basically the same as the flowering plant. Okay, so the only difference that we see between the flowering plants and the non-flowering plants is that flowering plants has the fruit and it has flowers. And then with the non-flowerings, they have cones. And they also have spores, which is another thing that we're going to study next. I want you to go ahead and look at the pictures that you have on page 196. It's flowers and cones galore on page 196. And it's these pictures. I'm going to start with a tomato. It's going to be at the very top. And we're just going to read these together. A tomato plant is another kind of flowering plant. Inside the tomato are new seeds, and this is how the tomato plant reproduces. As you can see, you see that on top, which is the leaf. And on the inside of our tomatoes, you know that there's those little tiny, tiny seeds. Those seeds are very tiny with the tomato plants, right? This is cacti. Did you think that cacti had flowers? They do. And they are flowering plants. They are attracted with pollinators like birds, bees, and bats. So bats are also pollinators. Weird, huh? Then we have our cones here. These cones are going to be a what? A non-flowering plant, right? There's no fruit and there's no flowers. It's cones instead. And these are redwood trees. They don't flower. They make cones inside are the seeds, and they're pine needle ones, if you can see. Little. All right. And this is a maple tree that are flowering plants. Those are those wing-shaped things that can fall, and they like basically spin in the air during the wind. And then we have a coconut, which is very similar to what we deal with here in Florida. So the coconut palms are flowering plants. They make coconuts and they bounce when they fall off the palm, and then they can float in water. And then here we have our cones. It's another cone tree. It's the cedar trees. And the wind transport their pollen and their cones and their seeds. And so they travel like the other seeds. All right, and so you can look at your page 197, number 10, 11, and 12. The ways that seeds travel, we can say water and wind and animals. Those are the ways that they travel. The differences between the flowering and non-flowering plants. We know that the flowering ones has fruit and flowers, and then the non-flowering ones, we have the cones. And what are some other things that don't have cones? We can have just regular plants with leaves with spores. Those are going to be like more like ferns. And that's going to wrap up our non-flowering lesson for the day. Make sure you click through the rest of the Nearpod to watch the videos. Hope you guys have a great day.